The SEAL commander didn't freeze because of fear. He froze because for the first time in his career, the battlefield showed him a miracle he couldn't explain. The ridgeline was collapsing, the team was pinned, and the sky was supposed to be empty. Every pilot already grounded by a fast-moving storm front. So when a single female voice cut through the static, calm and steady, "I have you in sight. Hold position." Every soldier looked up as if the mountain itself had spoken. And that's when the commander whispered the name no one had heard in years. Before we continue, where are you watching from tonight? Let me know down below. Your comments help shape the next stories we create here. The ambush began with a vibration the SEAL team almost missed. It wasn't an explosion, not yet, just the low, unsettling tremor of something shifting inside the mountain's ribs. Lieutenant Harlow raised a fist, halting the column. The canyon was too quiet, the wind cutting between the rocks in short, nervous breaths. That alone was wrong. In this region, the air usually moved like a constant tide. Tonight, it shivered. The commander checked the tablet. GPS drift, signal scattering, every icon lagging by a full second. Electronic interference wasn't new here, but this level of distortion meant one thing. Someone had prepared this kill box with precision. Before he could instruct the team to reposition, the first mortar screamed overhead and detonated on the far ledge, showering them with stone fragments. Another landed closer, then a third, perfectly bracketed, forcing them into the narrow cut of the pass. It was a shepherding tactic, and it meant eyes were on them. By the time the machine gun opened from the ridge, 2 SEALs were already dragging the medic behind cover. Dust rose in thick sheets, turning the air into a brick-colored fog. The commander tried to call for air support, but the response he got was a clipped apology. All aircraft grounded. Storm bands were building over the whole sector. No visibility, no margin for error. Anyone who attempted takeoff would be flying blind into a hurricane spine. In other words, suicide. Harlow leaned in, shouting over the ricochets. "Sir, we need cover fire from above or we're done." He knew. Everyone knew. But there was no one left in the sky. The ridge shook again, this time a deeper groan, as if the earth itself was bracing for collapse. One more hit and the overhang would fold, trapping them in a stone coffin. The commander scanned the grayed-out sky, not expecting anything, just habit, a soldier's last instinct to look up when hope dies. That's when the static broke. Not a request, not a plea. A single calm transmission slicing clean through the storm interference. "Ridge team, hold. Adjusting vector." The SEALs exchanged stunned looks. No aircraft should have been airborne. Every pilot had been ordered back. And yet that voice, steady, unshaken, spoke as if she'd been tracking them from miles.
Harlow whispered, "Who the hell is that?" The commander didn't answer. He couldn't. Because the name forming in his mind shouldn't have existed anymore. And if it truly was her, the battlefield was about to change in ways none of them were prepared for. The commander's thumb hovered over the transmit key, but he didn't press it. He knew that voice. Years ago, during a blackout operation no one officially admitted existed, he had heard the same controlled tone guiding a crippled squadron through a night of impossible coordinates. A voice that navigated chaos like it was a memorized map. But that pilot, that woman, had vanished after the Ghostline program was shut down. Her file wasn't redacted, it was removed entirely, the way intelligence agencies erase someone they never want traced. The idea she was alive made no sense. The idea she was back in the air made even less. Another burst of gunfire snapped him back to the present. The SEALs were pinned behind a fractured slab of granite barely holding together. Enemy fighters were repositioning, tightening the arc from both ridges. They weren't rushing in. They were collapsing the kill box methodically, confident their prey had nowhere to run. The commander watched dust plumes drift along the ridge tops, spotters adjusting for the final volley. It would come soon. He had minutes at best. The radio crackled again, this time with faint thunder.
Visibility at 40%. Wind shear rising. I'm still inbound.
Harlow stared upward, incredulous. Sir, is she crazy? No one can fly in this. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Ghost line pilots were trained for conditions others called unflyable. But even so, navigating a storm throat at low altitude was beyond reckless. Unless she wasn't flying by sight at all, unless she was using the old ghost line signatures, the instinctive mapping method that let pilots feel terrain through pressure, vibration, and microcurrents like migrating birds, a skill rumored to be impossible to teach and even harder to survive. The commander had seen exactly one pilot master it. A shockwave rolled across the canyon as another mortar struck the northern wall. A massive sheet of rock peeled off and slammed into the ground, spraying debris. The SEALs scrambled back, coughing, shielding their eyes. The canyon floor was shrinking. Every collapse narrowed the escape routes. In a few minutes, they wouldn't have cover at all. The medic shouted, "Sir, they're pushing us toward the center. They want a cluster shot." The commander knew the tactic. Force the target into a circle, then hit it with overlapping munitions. Brutal, efficient, unavoidable. Unless someone broke the pattern from above. He finally pressed the radio key.
Unidentified aircraft. Identify yourself. I repeat, identify.
For a moment, there was only wind and static. Then her reply came soft, almost conversational.
You already know who I am, Commander. Lock in your coordinates and stay low.
Every SEAL turned to him, waiting for confirmation. The commander's jaw tightened. They shouldn't believe a ghost. They shouldn't depend on someone the military had deliberately buried. And yet, he had heard that calmness before, right before she pulled an entire unit out of a collapsing valley that should have killed them all. He exhaled slowly. If it's really her, we may have one chance. Above them, the storm cloud shifted, swirling like something was cutting through from below. And for the first time, the enemy fighters on the ridge hesitated. They too had heard the sound growing in the distance, a low rising signature that didn't belong to the storm, but to something far more precise. The sound didn't build the way a normal aircraft approached. It rose in layered waves, slipping between the canyons like something navigating by instinct rather than instrumentation. The SEALs leaned out from behind their fractured cover, scanning the storm-dark sky as dust spiraled upward from the vibration. Whatever she was flying, it was cutting through turbulence heavy enough to rip a lesser airframe in half. The commander felt his heartbeat sink to the rumble, an old buried recognition pulsing through him. Ghost line pilots were trained to make the battlefield feel them before they became visible. And the storm was reacting, thinning in places, compressing in others, as if making way. Enemy fighters on the ridges shifted their positions abruptly. Their radios sparked with frantic chatter. The SEALs couldn't understand, but the tone needed no translation. Whoever controlled the ambush had not accounted for airborne interference. A few rifles swung upward, their muzzles trembling with uncertainty. The canyon walls answered with another unsettling groan. The overhang above the SEALs was loosening, dust raining down in a steady veil. One more mortar strike, and the entire ceiling would fold inward. They had seconds, not minutes. The commander keyed his radio. "Pilot, terrain is unstable. If you're planning something, do it now." Her reply came without urgency, the same measured steadiness she had in the worst nights of the Ghost Line missions. "Copy. I'm aligning with the corridor. When the pressure drops, move 10 meters left." The SEALs exchanged confused glances. There was no corridor,
The canyon was a narrow choke point, weather-torn and collapsing. But as they looked up, a shift rippled through the storm front. A long, pale seam appeared, an opening carved not by nature, but by wind pressure manipulated from below. She was using the storm itself as cover, forcing it open like a curtain. Even Harlow, who had dismissed the possibility minutes before, whispered, "How is she doing this?" The answer arrived as a tremor in their chests, the unmistakable signature of heavy engines pushing through violent airflow. A dark silhouette flashed across the seam, too fast to identify, too deliberate to be accidental. The ground shook as the aircraft slipped behind the ridge, completely unseen now, riding the storm edge like a rail. The enemy fighters reacted immediately, shifting to the west ridge, trying to angle their fire toward the sound. But they misjudged. The pilot wasn't circling. She was aligning. The commander spotted it first, dust lifting off the canyon floor in a straight, narrow line as if drawn by an invisible blade. The pressure drop she had warned about. "Move!" he shouted, grabbing Harlow by the vest and dragging him left. The team scrambled just as a slab of stone shattered where they'd been kneeling. The enemy had fired too early, thinking the tremor was a movement cue. Their shot missed, but it confirmed one thing: the pilot's maneuver was working. She was forcing their aim off balance. Thunder rolled overhead, not storm thunder, engine thunder. A controlled dive, a precision angle, a path no grounded pilot would ever attempt. The commander braced for impact, expecting her to pull up at the last moment, but instead the rumble vanished, swallowed by the canyon as if she had slipped into another layer of air entirely. The SEALs froze. Even the enemy fighters paused. Then her voice returned, lower now, almost whispering. "Commander, I'm beneath the ridge, marking targets." Beneath the ridge? Impossible. There was no flight space under that rock span. Unless she wasn't flying where the canyon allowed, but where she decided the canyon would yield. And the moment that realization hit, the ground began to vibrate again. This time not from collapsing stone, but from something accelerating directly toward the kill box. The vibration intensified until every loose pebble on the canyon floor danced in place. It wasn't the chaotic shudder of collapsing stone anymore. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like a pulse echoing through the earth. The SEALs pressed themselves tighter against the shattered wall, senses sharpened, unsure whether the danger was above, below, or directly behind them. The commander scanned the ridgeline, expecting the aircraft to reappear in the storm seam, but the sky remained an unbroken wall of gray. She was still invisible. That alone unsettled him more than the incoming fire. Ghost line pilots were known for impossible approaches, but this was beyond anything he had witnessed. For her to be beneath the ridge, she had to be flying inside the wind tunnel carved by centuries of storm erosion, an air pocket barely wide enough for a bird, let alone an aircraft. Yet the vibrations proved she was there, holding a trajectory no sane pilot would attempt. The enemy fighters sensed it too. Several dropped to their knees, pressing rifles tight to the ground to feel the tremors, confused by an approach that offered no visual cue. Their commander barked orders, frustration creeping into every syllable. They needed a target to shoot. They had none. The canyon suddenly inhaled. That was the only way the SEALs could describe it later. A sharp drop in pressure swept across the pass, flattening grass, pulling loose dust into a tight spiral that twisted upward like a rope. The storm seam above flickered, widening for a heartbeat, as if reacting to something tearing through the air directly beneath it. Harlow yelled over the rising wind, "She's pushing the storm open again! What is she planning? The commander understood only pieces, but those pieces formed a chilling picture. She wasn't trying to strike from above, or circle for a classic run. She was positioning herself in a space where radar couldn't track her, the enemy couldn't see her, and even gravity had to negotiate with her. A perfect blind-angle attack, if she didn't crash first. The vibration surged, rising from their boots to their chests. The medic pressed against the wall, eyes wide. "Sir, she's accelerating." That made no sense. No pilot accelerated in a canyon this narrow. You decelerated to survive. But the tremors didn't lie. The aircraft was gaining speed, and fast. The storm reacted in real time, the seam pulsing in sync with the rising roar. Even the enemy fighters felt the shift. Their formation broke. Some scrambled for deeper cover. Others fired blindly into the canyon mouth, desperate to hit something they couldn't locate. The commander keyed his radio, voice tight. "Your vector is unstable. If you push harder, you won't have space to climb." Her response came immediately, as if she had been expecting the warning. "I don't need to climb. I only need one clean line." The SEALs locked eyes. One line meant one run. No corrections, no second pass. A maneuver designed to end the ambush in a single strike, or end her with it. A high-frequency crack snapped through the canyon. Not gunfire, not thunder. Something slicing the air at extreme velocity. A shadow flickered beneath the overhang, gone before anyone could process it. The commander's breath hitched. She had committed. No turning back. The canyon walls glowed faintly from the shockwave. As debris lifted in a wide arc, enemy rifles jerked upward. Their spotters shouted warnings. Every fighter on both ridges pivoted toward the invisible force, rushing straight toward them.
And then, for the first time, the SEALs saw something. A ripple of motion, bending light at the edge of the storm seam. The only hint of the pilot carving a lethal path through the kill box. She was coming for the ridges. Both of them. At once. The ripple sharpened into a force the SEALs felt before they truly saw it. An unseen mass cutting through the storm at a velocity that made the canyon itself vibrate. The enemy fighters on both ridges opened fire in panic, but their rounds vanished into turbulence. They were aiming at noise, not at a target, and she had given them nothing to see. The commander realized that was her true advantage. Invisibility not through stealth technology, but through pure audacity. A streak of pressure tore across the left ridge first. Rocks burst outward in a tight, controlled spray, forcing the ambushers to scatter. The shockwave hit them before they even registered what had sliced above their heads. The SEALs ducked instinctively, bracing for the follow-up strike. But it didn't come from the same angle. The pilot had already shifted, using the storm seam as a pivot, redirecting her trajectory with impossible precision. Harlow spotted movement on the right ridge. "Sir, she's doubling back." The commander's breath caught. A double ridge pass required perfect timing. Strike one ridge, dive into the canyon throat, and climb into a mirrored attack before the enemy could reorganize. Most pilots wouldn't attempt it with clear skies. She was doing it inside a storm corridor, collapsing around her. The second pass hit harder. A sharp boom rolled across the canyon as a sheet of stone fractured cleanly from the ridge edge, sending enemy fighters scrambling down the slope. Their coordination disintegrated. Whatever command structure they had relied on had just been erased by a pilot they couldn't track, couldn't anticipate, and barely believed existed. Dust poured down in thick curtains. The SEALs repositioned behind a deeper outcrop, weapons ready, waiting for the enemy's final reaction. The ambushers were desperate now, firing blindly into both ridges, creating more chaos for themselves than for their target. A few attempted to regroup near the canyon mouth, shouting for heavier munitions. That was her cue. The canyon darkened for a heartbeat as the storm seam pulsed open once more. A compact shadow slid across it, still half invisible,
but now close enough for the SEALs to sense the exact precision of her angle. She wasn't retreating. She was committing to the final strike, the one that would decide whether this team survived. The commander keyed his radio. "Pilot, targets shifting to the mouth. They're preparing a volley." Her reply was calm, steady, unmistakable. "I see them. Hold position. I'm ending this." The SEALs braced. The enemy braced. Even the storm seemed to pause, tightening around the canyon like a closed fist. And then the pressure dropped. Again, far deeper than before, a sign she was diving into a vector that no aircraft should survive.
She wasn't just attacking the kill box anymore. She was breaking it open from the inside. The pressure drop deepened until the canyon felt hollow, like the air had been scooped out of it. Every SEAL pressed flat, knowing whatever she was doing required absolute stillness on their part. The storm seam above twisted into a narrow funnel, reacting to the aircraft accelerating directly underneath it. No one could see her yet, but the sound was undeniable. A razor-edged roar threading through stone and wind, growing sharper by the second. The enemy fighters at the canyon mouth finally understood the danger. They scrambled to reposition their launchers, shouting orders lost in the rising turbulence. A few tried to retreat up the slope, but the shifting dust revealed they were too late. A thin line of light warped across the seam, just a flicker, like heat distortion, and the commander knew that was her vector marker. She wasn't pulling up. She was committing to a straight-line charge through the tightest airspace in the region. The storm cracked open. A deafening blast tore through the canyon as her strike hit the mouth with surgical precision. Stone erupted upward in a towering plume, blotting out the last of the enemy formation. Shock waves rippled along both ridges, peeling away their cover and scattering fighters in every direction. The SEALs shielded their faces as hot dust swept over them, but behind the chaos was something far more important. Silence. No return fire. No regrouping. The kill box had collapsed, not on them, but on its creators. The commander rose slowly, stunned. She did it. She actually did it. Harlow scanned the sky. "Do you see her? Did she clear the pass?" Before the commander could answer, the radio crackled, faint, strained, but alive. "Mission complete. Storm too dense to climb. Taking the lower corridor out. You're clear." The SEALs exhaled in relief, but the wording sank in a beat later. The lower corridor. The most dangerous exit route in the region. The commander stared into the swirling storm funnel, trying to glimpse even the faintest outline of her aircraft. There was none. Only the sound of an engine fading deeper into the storm's throat, choosing the path no pilot should ever take. She had saved them, but her escape, that was another battle entirely. And the mountain wasn't done with her yet.